Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions. Today I'm joined by Shelley, Simone. We're going to take it back and go to one of our previous style episodes where we're going to speak to our entrepreneurs and we're going to talk life after exit. We'll set the tone for the story for Shelley. But Shelley, welcome to the show.
Thank you, and thank you very much for having me.
You're more than welcome. So let's take it back to 2015. I don't know when we started on Amazon, but we're pretty much the same time. May 15th, I think, we were at a meetup, and that's where we met, didn't we? In London.
Yeah, indeed. I actually remember because I broke my leg and then I was let go from my corporate kind of job, which at the time felt really brutal. And we were at this meetup. It was, I kind of think we were just getting started actually with the idea of Amazon. And you were so kind and you welcomed me because I felt very self-conscious about being there on crutches. So there you go. Yeah, it was amazing, actually.
Cool. So going back to then early days, because obviously you were there, as we called it, the gold rush, where anything goes on Amazon. You can go after getting reviews without any serious issues using third-party software and stuff. So let's have a quick chat about the early days. So you got started in some point in 2015, didn't you?
Yeah, we actually launched. So we did our Amazon course, which was an ASM copy that was done in the UK with a bunch of people, which actually kicked off around May. We launched our first set of products and I say we because at the time I was doing it with Richard, my other half. And we launched our first two products in the supplement category in around August. And it became really clear to me, even though they didn't teach this, that the only way that you could rise up the rankings was by doing some sort of manipulation. We didn't call it that at the time. We called it getting reviews. But it became within 3 weeks, I totally understood this new business model that, in my opinion, was built on a house of cards. And as part of this course, they ran this massive conference in early September. We had some pretty good speakers that came over, particularly John and Liz Herrera, and it was obvious to me that they were running these masterminds at the time that were genuinely pulling back the curtain, showing you what goes on backstage and revealing all. And so we went on their mastermind in China, actually, in October. We then spent 3 weeks exiting the supplement market, although we didn't exit it for about a year because we just ran it as a cash cow. But we then spent 3 weeks planning a gift product for Christmas, and the rest is kind of history because we really made it that Christmas. It was a phenomenal
so that kind
time.
of kicked you off and got you in the, I suppose, the good side of Amazon, where you could move away from supplements. And that's not to say everyone's bad in supplements. It's just we know that it's rife. And where they say, what's the term that they say? Where there's money, there is muck. And if you're going to go up against those people, then you either play their game or you don't, or you get out, right? So you went into giftable items, a lot safer in terms of TOS and everything else. So let's walk through quickly. 16, I think we were in, I was in China in the April. You was there in 16 as well. You went in the October, right? Because you'd done a few trips to China.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I was brought up in Asia. So going over to Asia is really quite cool for me. And it feels like I'm almost home. You know, the whole feeling is very reminiscent of my childhood. So I do love going over there. And but what happened to us was we realized that our giftable items were very seasonal. So we made most of our money in December, in kind of from Black Friday onwards, and in the other gifting periods through the year. But there were also some months, like in the middle of August, where you just want to slit your wrists and hide under the duvet. So it felt like a precarious business, even though it was very good for cash and very good for margin in the early days. It felt too precarious. So we went out to China to find other products, and we ended up starting a second brand, which, by the way, I would never recommend to anyone. You need to be able to really put your energy into growing a brand, and trying to do two at once is tough. It's really, it really sucks the life out of you. But hey, we just felt we needed to do that. And so we did. We ended up growing 2 Amazon native brands.
So how did 17, 18 look for you? You started Scale for Etail in 17, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then, so what happened in the early days was because we got connected to, these really big, massive sellers running these masters, we ended up going on about 3 trips to America, a couple of trips to China with masterminds. And that was awesome. And we learned so much, and we actually became pretty advanced Amazon sellers within a short space of time. We knew every trick under the hood, both white hat as well as potentially black hat. We knew who was doing it to us, all of this kind of stuff. Because like I said, we did keep the supplements going because they were brilliant cash cows for about a year or so after we decided this isn't really where we want to be. And we spent a ton of money, a hell of a lot of money on doing these trips and doing these masterminds. And so Scale for Etail was really born out of a need that I think everyone has, which is to continue your learning beyond your initial steps when you start an Amazon or an e-com business. And I wanted that continual learning. I'm always really hungry for learning. And so the best way to do this was to try and bring speakers from America over to us and start a community and share it with everyone. So that's essentially where the original idea for Scale for Etail came. Plus, let's be honest, it's extremely isolating, particularly. So I used to travel the world and go to other offices and spend lots of time around people. People was my job prior. So going from that to spending 12 hours a day in front of a computer turned me into much more of an introvert than I'd ever been. So spending time networking with other sellers, well, you know it yourself, Danny, you just get such a high from the exposure to the energy of other people, and that combined energy in a room is phenomenal.
Yeah. And so 17, you're doing monthly, I think, and then you did you worked with Amazon as well, didn't you? You've done some stuff at HQ in London.
Yeah, we were super fortunate. The Amazon team approached us because they could see that we were running these events and that they had a certain amount of popularity. And at the time, they were really looking for sellers who hadn't signed up to all of the programs that Amazon have to offer. So sellers who maybe weren't doing FBA in the UK, sellers who hadn't even started, sellers who weren't using Lightning deals fully, et cetera, et cetera. And so they essentially gave us a place to host our meetups. And it was a wonderful partnership for about a couple of years until I think they took back that space and turned it into offices when they outgrew them themselves.
Yeah. Cool. And so we're up to 18, 19.
Yeah.
Where were you with the 2 brands there? Obviously, they're working side by side.
Yeah. So I'll be honest, the height of the gift brand was 17, 18, phenomenal years, really high growth, amazing. And 19, I spent more time on the kitchen brand, the second brand that we started, which was also doing phenomenally well. And we needed to expand it into other products. So it needed that So one was my baby and the other was the one I needed to do for really great commercial reasons, if that makes sense. That's how I kind of felt about them. And so they were both great years. But of course, Brexit was starting to loom. And Brexit was really going to affect the second brand. It was a much more stable brand. You know, it had sales throughout the year, whereas the other one was extremely spiky. It obviously needed a good Q4. That always helped. And partly because it was kitchen products, it always did great around the winter months. So any time that the weather was cold, people cook. And so therefore, that did really well for the kitchen brand. But Brexit was going to potentially seriously affect the brand, because about 40% of the turnover was emerging from Germany and not being able to run the brand across Europe in the age-old ways that we had was a big concern for me.
Yeah, I can imagine. And so where did you go from there with when Brexit appeared? What was the financial, not numbers, but the financial impact in percentages there? Like you said, Germany, I think, was 40%.
Yeah.
Did you manage to recover from that from other areas in the market and have an upswing, or?
Actually, I went and came up with my own solution to Brexit. And as a result, I never lost the turnover in the first place. Yeah. But that seemed to suck the lifeblood out of me over the course of much of 2020. And it was scary. It was scary to think you could lose that much of your revenue if you didn't come up with the right solution. But I was determined to. I didn't want my business, going down the pan. And it was a good global business, but because it was operating in the UK, it was operating well in the UK, it was operating really well in America, as you might imagine. But Germany was also a really massive part of it, and a very important part.
So getting into, when did you start to engage the thoughts of getting an exit? Was that around 2021?
Yeah, it was in 2020. Actually, it's more related to scale for Etail. Like I'm sure you might have experienced, you get approached to have people help and support your events and sponsor them so that you can put them on at a reduced price for sellers. And I got approached by about 16 aggregators. And it was at that point that I realized this might be a good moment for me to look at sell. And a couple of them actually approached my brands, not me as the owner and the founder of Scale for Etail. So it just became clear to me that this was a window of opportunity. Brexit had, like I said, been really problematic to solve. And I felt I was spending more time on the supply chain issues. And of course, there were supply chain issues coming out of China as well over the course of 2020. It wasn't a great year. So I kind of thought, this is too much. And I think I might need to sell one brand. But in the end, I just got great offers for both of them.
Did you go to the same people for the two brands, or two separate aggregators?
No, two separate. So actually what happened was I initiated a couple of conversations with aggregators for the different brands and realized that I probably needed some extra help and advice on how to price my business. So I ended up going to a broker, a very well-known broker called Empire Flippers for the kitchen brand. And they were awesome in helping me to understand what the value of that business was and how to price it up. And so in the end, I used them. It did get bought by an aggregator, but it was through their help and support. And for the other brand, I ended up going to a really small UK broker run by a guy called Alex Alex Lundy.
Okay.
And he secured another aggregator. So,
right.
There you go.
Cool. So we went from that point there. So you engaged with the aggregators. What was was it simultaneously? Meaning, were you dealing with two businesses, preparing them for sale and negotiating simultaneously?
Pretty much. It kind of happened by accident, because you start putting a feeler out and then you don't hear for maybe a couple of weeks or a month or whatever, and you don't expect everything to come flooding in at once. But life sometimes has 3 buses when you're standing at the bus stop that each follow each other, and that's I suppose what happened to me. So I wouldn't recommend that, because it was extremely tough. It required a lot of energy. It required a lot of resilience to go through the negotiation. So finding the aggregators, in my view, was relatively easy, particularly using the resources I used. But negotiating the contracts and achieving the deal was very, very draining. It took a lot of negotiation, took a lot of maneuvering. Luckily, in my previous background in corporate life, I'd done a lot of M&A integrations. I'd done about 6 of them as part of, my old job, as it were. Yeah. So I understood what happens when you're going through an integration and when you're going through a certain part of the buying process, even though I'd never experienced it personally. So I guess I was a little bit forewarned in some ways.
Can you, I've just got to let the puppy in 1 sec. She's locked out in the garden. Can you carry on? I want you to cover give us some key areas, like 2 or 3 things where it was like the darkest hour just before dawn, like where it could fall apart and, your heart's racing. I'll be 1 sec, but do you want to just run through those? Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. No problem at all. So the toughest part, actually, of selling a business once you've agreed the price is going through the contract negotiation, in my humble opinion. And in both cases, these were bigger companies than me. These were companies with bigger resources, bigger lawyers, more expensive lawyers. They came up with so in the case of who's that? Let's see who that is over there.
This is my new puppet. Well, she's getting big now. This is Nesta.
Oh, hello, Nesta. Hello.
Yeah. So she was just out in the garden before we started.
Yes.
I forgot she was there. So,
oh dear,
not a good father, right? So sorry, carry on.
Yes. Okay, so the toughest thing is the negotiation around the contract, and in both of those situations, they had bigger lawyers, better lawyers than me. And actually, if you're a seller, one of the things that you'll find is that using lawyers to do the negotiation can end up racking up a huge bill. So I handled the negotiations myself and only let the lawyers kind of top and tail and put it into legalese for me. In the case of the business that I sold through Empire Flippers, I actually used the Empire Flippers team to message them occasionally, and so that I didn't get into direct conflict, and so that when things got really, really tough, it ended up just being a very pleasant conversation between I think he was like second to the CEO and myself, and he would come in on his white horse and we'd resolve the outstanding issue. But that had to happen about 6 times. So I think it's important you stand your ground. You don't accept terms and conditions that are going to tie you in for all sorts of things beyond your control, way beyond the point where you hand over the business. Because once you hand it over, you have zero control about potentially with regard to the results that they're going to deliver. And I was clear, I made a sale. I didn't stay on with the businesses. And I did that because of my background in M&A. And I had enough ideas about how that's very hard to manage, extremely hard. So I also wanted to make sure that these contracts didn't tie me in. So there were things in there like, you know, if we mess up, then you pay. You pay the money back, stuff like that. You can't accept those kind of things, and you have to be very strong and tough, I think, in that part of the negotiation. And you have to be capable of saying, it's a deal breaker, I'm going to walk away on this particular issue, and not be afraid. Not be afraid to do that, even though you might potentially be the weaker party. But then remember, they want your business.
Yeah, exactly. Would you say they're one of the top tier aggregators that you sold to? You know, like, you know, there's a top 5, and then there's the other guys that have come in.
No, actually, so I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest seller in the whole wide world. And so I sold to relatively small aggregators, and I sold to the first aggregator in each of the countries. So a Finnish aggregator and a Dutch aggregator. It's still a tough negotiation regardless. And actually, that was one of my points in the end with one of them, where we were going backwards and forwards. I had to remind them that actually this isn't a £40 million business that we're buying. We don't need a contract that is as belt and braces as that. We need to relax and let the deal go through.
Well, that, I suppose that's your leverage as well, because they're not the one of the top 5, without naming names.
Yes,
you're in a better place to negotiate, and knowing that they're new to the market and they still need to buy businesses, because they have to have a monthly turnover of confirmed businesses that like they're looking to acquire. So effectively there was no earnout. And why would you do an earnout with a company that doesn't have history? It's different if they've been around 2 or 3 years and can prove, you know.
correct. Yes, but also if you're going to stick around for an earnout, you are actually almost getting into a marriage. It's a business marriage, but it is a bit like a marriage. And so you really, you know, in these negotiations, you don't go and visit them. They don't come and visit you. You actually never do anything face to face, in my experience. So why would you get into bed with someone that you actually don't know?
There's horror stories out there. I mean, some people I know quite closely have had nightmares, you know, being sued or attempted to be sued and stuff. So you have to be very careful.
Yeah, you do. And I made it a condition of all my agreements that I couldn't be sued for anything beyond my control. All those clauses had to go out. And more importantly, that they would submit themselves to a court of arbitration that I could actually pay for and reach. And if they were in the wrong, they would pay for my costs.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so let's get to, how long was the timeline of getting it closed? Was it something like a 6 months, 3 months, 2 month period?
So I think it was about 2 months for one of the brands, the kitchen brands.
That's pretty quick.
Yeah, that is pretty quick. Now, I should explain, I did not sell the companies associated with the brands. I sold the brand and anything associated with the brand assets. And so therefore, it's a much, much simpler sale. There's a lot less due diligence required, which again is a reason why you shouldn't have contracts that are awfully congested with all sorts of terms and conditions that would really only apply if you were selling a company in bad faith. With the other one, we cleared 2 weeks later. So again, stupid idea. Don't do that again. And that one took a little bit longer. And actually, because I was doing both of them at the same time, I was trying to run the business, I wasn't always most prompt in coming back to them. And to some extent that worked in my favor. Yes.
Yeah, the negotiation, because there's that quietness in between the calls. Yes. Their mind starts running over. They're going to pull out, and you're simply just busy trying to fight fires on the other business as well. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And you know, I'm going to be a bit sexist for a moment, if I may,
of course,
because it's a little bit like a courting episode in your life. And if you're a girl, you actually should know how to be courted rather than to court. And it's the right time to use that skill set, if I can put it delicately.
No, at the end of the day, I always say to sellers, I'm still fully supportive of aggregators. Yeah, but then they'll read articles that says, which I got a cut and shut on, which was there'll be a bloodbath because they didn't put all the good things about aggregators in there. But I always say to sellers, look, their job is to get the business as cheap as possible. Your job is to get the maximum. So you shop around, you negotiate, like you said, it's courting, you go for coffee, and then there's the marriage at the end. But there's all the other stuff in between. There's always that back and forth. And it's almost like with those kind of negotiations, they have the upper hand anyway, because it's cat and mouse that they play 7 days a week. This might be the one only time in your life that you play cat and mouse. And generally, if someone's played cat and mouse a lot more than you, they're going to be better than you at it. So you need to get your skills up when you're dealing with these kind of stuff. And remember, at the end of the day, you're just doing business for the benefit of you and your family, and they're doing business on the benefit of their investors and their own team,
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Having said that, once we did the deal and we signed these contracts, they were wonderful to work with, both of them. They had really great members of the only thing I would say is there was like 10-1 on both sides. So there was like a bunch of these guys over here, just me. Well, not quite, but me with a very tiny team. And a bunch of those guys and all asking for information at the same time. So that was a bit.
And that can be unsettling when they're all around the table. There's just you on the call and they ping you from different directions. Like they're trying to get a yes and you're saying no, but someone else on the team asks the same question in a different way. And they try and wear down your resource with that. And you have to be really firm,
Yeah, you do. Yeah, absolutely. But like I say, once you're done, that I was really committed actually to making them have a good handover. And in both those cases, we were coming into potentially Q4, certainly in terms of the supply chain, it needed to be ready well in advance of Q4. So I think I was very good. I spent 3 months after that in pretty much in both cases, supporting them, making sure they had all the information, doing proper introductions to all of my suppliers and the supply chain members, and making sure that the deal that I had didn't really change over the course of the integration. It probably has afterwards, prices have gone up, etc. But I maintained, if you like, a good status quo for that first Christmas that they both really needed in order to show success. And I understood that.
Cool. So first check clears, check. You log into online banking, drop out the escrow, straight into your online banking. First reaction?
Yeah, obviously enormous joy, relief, pride potentially that you've managed to make it happen against some pretty odd days where you did not go dancing around the kitchen. It is a fantastic feeling. But also knowing that you've still got a lot of handing over and a lot of securing them and making sure that they do well, particularly in that first quarter or so, running into Christmas. It's fatigue because of the energy that I had to put in to get to that point. Yeah. So I think I slept for a whole day. As simple as that.
That's the first money's cleared. Celebrate, glass of wine, or did you do anything lavish? Did you buy something for yourself, or?
No. So we, I come from reinvesting. I believe in using money to make money until the point where I no longer need to work. And so it's been reinvested into other projects, other businesses, without too much of a break or a hoopla. There's still more, and I will use it to just invest more in other projects.
Would you mind talking about, for the benefit of other sellers, because obviously what happens is they're so used to pulling down a wage, And then suddenly their brand new problem is, oh shit, I've got no wages coming. I have to touch the principal. And then they rush around and go, well, property, etc., etc. What are some of the things that you, and maybe Richard as well, who was a part of the business before, as I understand it, and you've got you've got a series of businesses. Where do you see good places for sellers to invest their cash?
Well, actually, there probably still is no better place to make $1 million in about 3 years as Amazon. I actually would go back into Amazon with a different idea, with a different project, and knowing my weaknesses now. So I think I'm really good at product design, product marketing, everything around getting that product looking absolutely amazing and being something that customers really desire. But my weaknesses are digital marketing, driving traffic from outside Amazon to Amazon. So in my next iteration, I would certainly go into it again, but I would probably go into it with somebody helping me because I'm so clear on what I'm shit at.
Yeah.
And I deluded myself for quite some time, thinking I could outsource it, but I never quite found the right partners. Do you know what I mean? The other thing I would probably do, because one of the aggregators said to me, hey, Shelley, next time you want to do something, come to us first. We'll help you with it. And then obviously we'll put a reserve price on it to buy it.
We'll give you a fixed outcome. Yeah. I had a similar thing as well. I think they're good ideas, but they may be better ideas after the bubble. So they give you the money to go, and then they give you a fixed outcome. As long as it's fixed, and they say, well, we'll take this off you in 2 years. Then you're guaranteed something. But obviously, when I was offered that, I haven't exited, by the way. What I mean is that I was starting a new brand.
Yes. And
then when I spoke to them, they said, look, why don't we give you the money? We'll put up, I don't know, 100, 200K. We'll give you a fixed outcome, and we'll take it off you for 2 years, after 2 years, because we're using your skill set and the people that you put in the team to make it happen to that point, and then we'll take it up, which is a good idea for sellers out there who, even though I haven't exited, obviously with the agency and everything I do, I'm equipped to do it, and that's why I'll get the people maybe advance to me and ask me, right? But there are plenty of sellers out there who could go again and have a fixed outcome after their exit because they've proved themselves in the exit process. So there are these other opportunities that people can take and still take a wage. The money, their principal sits in the bank. They work on a new brand with a fixed outcome, but obviously multiples will be lower. Yeah,
absolutely. But the other businesses that we have are, so we have property rentals, which we started many, many years ago, mainly in London, which isn't where they should be. But anyway, that provides us with an income. We also have a furnished holiday let, which actually I got the project last year, and that's had an amazing first season. Really amazing. That's in Norfolk, and that was a lovely project because that one thing I've discovered by being an Amazon seller and around the product design and product packaging and is I actually have some creative skills I never really knew existed. So furnishing a holiday let and making it look absolutely top notch tapped into that creative vein, and it gave me great pleasure to do that, and it's really fun marketing it now because it's so easy, basically.
Are you formulating? No. Sorry, I butted in there. Finish what you're saying.
And then in addition, Richard has a company where they build properties, high-end properties, mainly in the Rutland region, which is near to where we live, which is a very beautiful chocolate box English kind of cottage style of an area of the UK. And so obviously part of the investments might have gone into here or there or whatever else we're doing next. So, yeah, we do have a lot of options. And I think there's always a difficulty. If you have too many options, then you end up diluting your ability to be successful everywhere. And then if you have a couple of eggs in the basket, or maybe 3, at least that way, you know that, 2 out of 3 ain't bad if it's successful, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And so you mentioned, have you started formulating ideas for a new brand since you exited just before Christmas? Was that right?
Yes, that's right. So I have, because, your mind, when you're an entrepreneur and when you get into this whole entrepreneurial spirit, even though I never started my life in a very entrepreneurial way, your brain just never shuts down. I'm sure you're the same. Like I'll be walking. So like you, we got a lovely puppy about 3 years ago. He's off in daycare today because he would never leave me alone. But he's a cockapoo, and they're just so adorable. They look like teddy bears. But he's had a lot of issues, actually, a lot of allergic reactions to things. And so, so my next project will be percolating around him because he's like my new passion.
Excellent. Before we go, you've got something coming up next month, I hear, in London. Do you want to explain a bit more?
Sure, yeah. So Scale for Etail events were put on hold for quite some time, obviously because of COVID, and we ended up having to do virtual events, which are nowhere near as feel good. They're obviously great for getting some content and getting it efficiently, but it doesn't allow for that whole networking. So our events are back. Our first big one is in April, in the second week on the 14th and 15th. And we have somebody really amazing flying in to do a masterclass and an evening networking event with us. And he is the one and only great Steve Simonson. So most of your listeners, I'm sure, will have come across Steve Simonson and his Catalyst 88 events, or indeed maybe bumped into him through the Empowery network. He has so many different businesses himself. He's a bit like a man with a finger in every pie. But he's going to be running a bit of a mini e-commerce MBA. That's the best way for me to describe it. So any founder of any business really wants to come along and listen to him. He helps you with your system thinking, which I've really struggled with actually in the early days. I could not write an SOP even today to save my life. I used to make my VAs write the SOPs and then I would check them and edit them. But it's those kind of things that you really need so that you don't drown, drown in your own success. You really need to be able to build a business properly. And Danny, that's why people are coming to you, because you know how to create structures, you know how to multiply, you know how to use your efforts efficiently, all of these things. When you first start out as an entrepreneur, the things that will eventually trip you up if you're not careful.
I think it's mainly the reason I've got pretty good systems in place is because I've got good people around me. And if there's something I don't like to do, I always try and shop it off to give to someone else so I can concentrate on what I think I can do. And then from that is where you kind of develop those skills as well. Anything from accounting, there's so many different things you don't need to do in your business. You need to have an eye on them, but don't need to do them. Or it wears out all of your energies for the really, really important stuff, problem solving, creative thinking, strategy and stuff like that. And you need to save that energy, especially me, I'm 46 now. I'm not getting any younger. I'm in the second stride of my life. I always think, do I really need to do that? Who can do that for me? Who can I pay to do that? And then I just shelf off the bits that I want. There's not a massive structure. Steve is brilliant at stuff like that. And obviously he's working, hundreds of millions a year, massive teams, and he's on a whole new level. So.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is.
What's the best way that people can reach you if they want to reach out to you personally?
So we have a Facebook group. Just look for Scale for Etail on Facebook. Go to our website. There's an events section where all of our events, and we are running some webinars over the next 3 weeks as well. So you can sign up there. You can sign up through the Facebook group, or just reach out to me, Shelley at scaleforetail.com.
Excellent. Guys, thank you for joining us today. Shelley, thank you for joining us. If this is your first time, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Take care of yourself and your family. Sharon will be back in the chair tomorrow. Much love.